Day 2, shift your relationship of my 5-day challenge, and today we're talking about resistance. So we're going to discuss resistance, what it is, how and why it shows up in our relationships. We're going to talk about different forms of resistance and what I've experienced and my sneaky version of it. And then we're going to talk about how we can actually soften and get beyond it. And again, I just want to remind you, I'm talking as a heterosexual woman because that's what I know and that's what I'm familiar with. But this is relevant no matter what your flavor is. And the other thing is, this is relevant if you are in a relationship now or not. You know, your next relationship will benefit from everything that you can kind of process from what we're talking about in this challenge. So we know now, after yesterday, we were talking about relationship energetics and the couple frequency. And we know that we are 50% of that couple frequency. So we have the power to shift it, not only because we are 50% of the input, but if we are not holding the frequency there, if we don't hold it in place, then it cannot stay there. It takes two to tango, all right? So it takes two to hold an energy in place. So if we don't want to hold it, we don't have to. So we have the power to shift that. That's what we discovered last night. So if we do have this power, why are we stuck? And the answer, my darlings, your ego doesn't like this. The answer is resistance. Resistance, we all have it. And we shouldn't feel ashamed of having it, because resistance actually is a part of you that is trying to keep you safe. Resistance is a hidden force. We can't see it in ourselves, but you know it's there if you're stuck. You know it's there if you're not getting your work done, if you're not heading towards what you love, if you know life is not as good as it really could be. You are resistant. And resistance really is a sneaky form of fear, right? So it comes from the part of us that wants to keep us safe. Safe is not changing. Safe is familiar, all right? Safe is blaming another person so I don't have to look at my own shit. Safe is avoiding discomfort. Uncomfortable feelings, that's not safe, okay? So in a way, we need to say thank you to our resistance. Thank you for keeping me safe. I really appreciate it. It's awesome. But resistance, you are not working for me, and I would rather not be stuck. I also get the feeling that resistance makes us look silly. Our egos often make us look silly because something's not working, but we're clinging on and we're hanging on because we don't want to change, and it kind of looks silly from a higher perspective. So I want to now dive into the reasons that we resist, the big reasons I've discovered that we are resistant. Okay, now, if you are single, I want you to think about this in your past relationships. So I want you to just kind of shift whatever is going on here to how you've been in the past and see if there's patterns there for you. Also, I want you to think about resistance around why you are not going towards the relationships you really love, or the belief in yourself. Because when I was seriously single, I was so resistant that I didn't even see the guys that liked me, that were attracted to me. I thought no one was attracted to me, and I was so stuck in that idea that I was completely blind. So sometimes resistance can blind us. So if you're single, just keep that in mind. Okay, so the number one reason that we are resistant to shifting, to stepping into our power to shift and change our relationship, is the fear of the unknown, especially the fear that he might leave me. If I change, what if he leaves me? What if he doesn't meet me? What if he doesn't appreciate that version of me? And I think, that is a big one. It's a big fear, and it's a real fear, There is a part of us that is much happier in a familiar, yet maybe not all that satisfying relationship, rather than taking a risk of losing it all. And that's understandable, right? But I've got 3 things to say to this. One is, really, do you want to stay stuck like this forever? Because if you don't make a move, if you don't shift anything, you're looking at 30 to 40 years of the same. And is that really what you want? The second thing I want to say about this, and it kind of, the next 2 points are related. Second thing is, actually, you in fear is not you in your radiance, is not you in your magnetism. Your partner is not actually, your attractor field is not actually as dynamic when you are holding back your truth out of fear. The charge is diffused down, it becomes really limp. When you are really standing in your radiant woman, that is when you are attractive. That is when your man's going to stand up and go, wow, hello, okay, sure, The other thing about staying here rather than shifting, you think you're doing this for your man. You're not. You're not helping him. You are actually holding him back. You are allowing him to be mediocre, And when you actually shift, when you ask for more, when you are boundaried, when you are radiant, when you are fierce about what you want, you are not only attractive, but you're also bringing him into his, strength, his power becomes really charged. So I actually think, and I've coached many, many women in this shift, and the results are 99% of the time, he rises to the challenge. He finds you all of a sudden, so much more alluring. The second big reason that we don't step into our power to shift, that we are resistant, I've found, is this one. Why should I if he isn't? You know this one? I know this one. It's like, I'm always doing the work. I'm the one who's always doing the evolving. I'm always trying to change things and trying to make things better. What the hell does he do? He does nothing. I used to have this in fact, I often still do have this in the whole, if we have a problem, he's happy to sit on it. Whereas I'm like, well, you're not going to say anything? I mean, come on. Clearly we have a problem here. We need to talk about this. But I believe that, okay, there's a few things here. Firstly, I think that the why should I if he isn't comes out of the whole punishment paradigm. You know, the punishment paradigm, it's kind of the way we were parented. Well, if you're of my generation, it's the way we were parented. You did something wrong, you need to be punished. Yeah? And the punishment paradigm really asks for blame, and it asks for payment for your sins. But we all know that, you know, when we're raising kids, or when we're teaching kids, or when we're trying to get the best out of a person, that punishment doesn't really work. I mean, punishment equals stress, and stress, you know, it closes off your brain integration and does not allow you to actually function optimally. And so, why should I if he isn't working for us? Yeah? For one, the masculine is a lot more able to be uncomfortable for longer than the feminine. So I think it's often us female, this feminine energy that is more eager, more able to create change. Yeah? So stop asking this question, why should I if he doesn't? Because benefits you. You know, you're going to be changing and shifting your couple frequency. This benefits you. It benefits you both. Yeah? And then you can feel better. When you feel better, he'll feel better. And when he feels better, you'll respond better. And it goes up and up in an upward spiral. Yeah. Okay, the third big reason why we resist. Number 3. And this brings me to my story. This was a really sneaky bugger for me. And, you know, it took me ages to actually realize. It's not all him. It's fear. So my story was that I was stuck in a kind of yucky feeling couple frequency. And the truth is that it was kind of comfortable for me. So I was stuck in blame and feeling cranky at him. But what that meant was I didn't have to look at my own shit. I didn't have to look at myself. So there was a comfort for my ego, for that part of me that wanted to keep me away from discomfort, away from having to look at myself, away from taking the responsibility. That part of me was really happy just to hang out there in blame. You know, if it was his fault, I was sweet. But the truth was, and I only really realized this once I started to really unravel it, the truth was that I was afraid of really getting close. And as soon as I stopped the blame and the crank and could soften into my couple frequency without all that, I was exposed to, actually, I'm afraid of really getting close to you. It's really uncomfortable for me to get close. It's really uncomfortable to feel love from one to another, really kind of face-to-face, intimate. And so that actually shifts everything, you know. Instead of being in a cranky, comfortable dynamic, I'm now in a really honest evolution with my husband, sharing that I'm afraid, that this is uncomfortable for me, that I'm stepping into my own healing here and I need his help, you know. And that is so much more connected because it's honest, it's my truth. And I actually think that I'm not the only one that has this discomfort with intimacy, this fear of really standing face to face and exposing my truth to another human and feeling love for the truth of who I am. I mean, that can be really uncomfortable. I don't know if it's just me. I'd love to hear from you. Can you relate? to this. But it's a much nicer place to be for us as a couple than cranky, irritable blame. Okay, so they're the three big reasons for resistance. And I think it's really important to come back to the idea that as human beings, in order to be happy, we need to be moving and growing. Movement and growth and evolution equals satisfaction on a soul level. And relationships are the impetus for growth and evolution. It's perfect, right? So that was lovely Anthony Robbins. In order to be happy, human beings must feel they are continuing to grow. So true. So what about you? I'm going to invite you now to tune in to where you feel resistant. So I'm going to invite you to put your hands on your heart again. Hands on heart is where we start, right? Close your eyes down. Take a deep breath in. All right. And I'd just like you to really invite your truth here. To see if you feel some resistance to shifting your relationship, to shifting your relationship status, to shifting your relationship energy. What would it be? What is the resistance? You could feel it as a tightness or a tension or an energy somewhere in your body. It's more than likely a fear. What are you afraid of? Just breathe and ask yourself that. And if you are willing to share it with us, please type your answer and let us know. What are you afraid of? What is the form of your resistance? Why do you resist? Where are you not stepping into your power? Just take another big, deep breath in here. And sigh it out. It can be really uncomfortable, right? So it is more than likely that you are resistant to shifting in some way, shape, or form. It's okay if you couldn't really tap into or tune into a feeling of resistance, but I just want you to know that it's more than likely that there's some resistance there. It's so sneaky. It hides from you, and it masks itself as blame or as deflection or as projection onto your partner or onto the world. Because it's so sneaky, it's often really hard to get beyond. But I'm going to give you my 4 stages of getting beyond resistance. And the first big thing we need to do is we need to admit the frustration. And by that, I mean admit it to our body, not just to our story. We need to actually bring it into our body and feel it for the honest to God discomfort that it is. You know, what happens when we actually truly admit and acknowledge discomfort is it starts to motivate us to actually make a move. So the motivation comes from discomfort, right? That's why we're always cycling. You know, life is not a straight line, and we're going to really cover this in day 4. But when we actually allow ourselves to feel what this stuckness feels like in our body, like let's just take a breath now and feel it. How does it feel to be stuck and resistant and afraid. Pretty uncomfortable, right? Really let that in. If you need to, have a cry about it. Invite it in, open to it. Comfort yourself, but open to it. Because that is what's going to get you moving. Number 2, the second thing we need to do in order to move past resistance is know your choices. You always have choices. Yeah, you can choose the same old pattern, the same old thing that you have always done. You can choose that. You can choose to have your relationship frequency, your couple frequency, filled up with the same energy, with the same responses. Or you can choose something different. You always have a choice. You always have a choice what energy you are bringing and how you respond to a trigger. So knowing your choices means really knowing the consequences as well. So behaving or responding in the same old way has the same old consequences as you've always got. And responding differently has different consequences, right? Potentially much better consequences. So know your choices. Know that you always have a choice. You don't have to respond in a certain way. So the third stage for moving out of resistance is growth, commitment to growth. Because growth is what we're here for. Growth is what makes us feel good. Movement and momentum always feels better than stuckness. And that doesn't mean that we always have to be moving, that we always have to be growing. There are times when, when we might be in a valley or on a plateau, and that's different to being stuck. But humans must always grow. We're like trees. Do you ever see a tree that has stopped growing? No, it's not possible. They're constantly growing, and we're the same. So I'll just read this little pointer from Linda. She says, I think there's a resistance to placing value on my time, which is back to the earlier question of what resistance you can feel. If I'm honest, I haven't been using my time effectively myself, and it's right in my sacral. This is beautiful awareness, Linda. Lovely. I need boundaries. And look, the sacral chakra. Sorry, I'm in the solar plexus. The sacral chakra. So all about pleasure and sensuality. I need boundaries around when and where my time is spent with 2 young ones and several projects in progress. Beautiful, beautiful. And so if you are going to value your time, Linda, absolutely, that just naturally creates boundaries, right? It creates, that's not okay, this is okay. Lovely, beautiful awareness. Thank you so much for sharing, Linda. So yeah, commitment to growth. That's a big deal, when it comes to resistance, because resistance is stopping us. It's keeping us stuck. It's keeping us small. It's keeping us the same. And it is that part of us that just wants us safe. And safe is logical, right? It's kind of like, it's really logical and safe not to move and not to make any difference, any changes. But it's not satisfying, and it's not your best, and it's not working for you, basically. Okay, so the fourth thing is to pause and act differently. Have you ever noticed that the pause can change your life? Pausing rather than firing off and responding, like reacting, like having that sort of knee-jerk reaction. If we just actually pause, like do this all the time with my kids, like I'm about to go, but instead just taking a moment before you respond, taking a moment to consciously get into a place where you have choices and options. Yeah? So this is something we can incorporate over time and allow it to become a default. But initially, it's going to be something that you're going to have to try and remember and try and practice in the moment. And you know, there's a zone of tension, and what I mean by that is there's a zone where you are about to react and respond in a kind of knee jerk. In that zone is where you want to pause. But it takes quite a lot of consciousness to actually pause and take a breath and take a moment in that moment. Okay, so that takes practice, and you'll get better at it over time. Initially, you might start pausing after the event, but it'll come closer and closer to that moment that can change everything. That instead of responding from ego, from trying to blame and trying to, you know, stay out of uncomfortable, that you can actually go, actually, do you know what? This is really uncomfortable for me. I'm really afraid. You know, and the minute you're actually sharing your truth, charge is diffused. So take a pause and you can act differently. Okay, I love this quote that I'm going to read you from Steven Pressfield from the book The War of Art. Now that book is front to back cover about resistance. It's talking about creating something, a work of art or a book or whatever, but it just talks about how resistance is just this huge beast that is trying to stop us. And it's the same in our relationship. He says, never forget, this very moment, we can change our lives. There never was a moment and never will be when we are without the power to change our destiny. This second, we can turn the tables on resistance. This second, we can sit down and do our work. And our work is to channel that radiant woman, to trust that we can learn and grow in this moment. Wow, okay. We're powering through tonight. So, I want to give you a practice now to build your shift muscle. To build your muscle that will help you move out of resistance. And the practice is to channel your 80-year-old self. Now, I invite you to write a letter to yourself from your 80-year-old self. Put pen to paper and actually think what it would be like to be nearing the end of your life. You know, for me, I'm 40-something, 43. This is about 40 years into my future. You know, that's a long time, and it's a beautiful expanse of my life. I want to be thinking when I'm 80 that it was well spent. So I want you to put your hands on your heart again and take a deep breath in and out. Center yourself in your heart, just into feeling and energy rather than thinking. And bring yourself into your 80-year-old self. Into her mindset. Yeah, she's lived. Her life is so precious. And when you're 80, you know you haven't got that much longer. You know, yeah, you might live another 20 years, but you just don't know. But I want you to look back at what you were proud of. What was the most meaningful? What really mattered to you? What really mattered? Was it being small and quiet? Or was it the moments when you really stood up for yourself, when you were fierce, when you made a shift? What has added value to your life? What has meant a lot to you? How does your 80-year-old feel looking back? Where is she now in relation to her resistance? Where is she now in relation to the shift that she wanted to make? So just feeling in to your 80-year-old self. And I invite you right now to go grab a pen and paper or your journal and go write a letter. Dear Nicole, it is with great pleasure that I write you this letter, looking back over such a wonderful life. Get specific though. I want you to look back and tell yourself what you're really proud of, what you could have done better, what you regret, what you're so pleased about, and then sign it with love and gratitude for a beautiful life. I think this is a really valuable practice because it really helps us get clear on what matters in this moment. Yeah? And that helps us get beyond resistance. So to summarize today's session, you have the power to shift your relationship. And perhaps the reason you are not stepping into this power is some form of resistance. And it's holding you back. So becoming aware of your resistance, your reasons for it, the truth behind it, and your options and choices helps you shift out of the old frequency. So how does that feel for you guys?